Hey guys, it's Dean. Welcome to Manflow Yoga. This is a live broadcast, so if you're watching this with me live now, or if you're watching this as a recorded version later on, just keep in mind that there could be some buffering and there could be a little loss in coverage, so to speak. So just keep in mind that this is not a pre-recorded video; it's a live broadcast. So you're seeing everything and whatever Facebook or whatever broadcast or YouTube or Instagram decides to do. If it cuts out for a little bit, it'll be right back on shortly. So, all right, thanks guys for joining me today. It's 12 p.m. Central Time, which means we're doing 12 p.m. Central Time on a Wednesday, which means we're doing a live. We do these every day at 12 p.m. Central Time. So if this is your first time joining in, let me know. Say, hey, Dean, this is my first time. If it's not, then let me know. Hey, I'm a returning person. I know these things are every Wednesday at 12 p.m. and I'm looking forward to this week's topic. So this week's topic is going to be focused on beginning yoga tips for men, and we're going to focus on some common alignment mistakes or some common errors that I tend to see, especially with men. And there are a few reasons why men will make these mistakes as opposed to women making these mistakes. Number one is that women are more flexible, and in particular, they are much more flexible in the hips. So men they'll either go too far, so they'll go to where they probably can't do, or they'll just do it a little bit differently than women. So that's one reason. Second reason is men tend to use their upper bodies more. So whereas their center of gravity is more focused on their hips and their core area, men tend to use their upper bodies a little bit more. So you're more likely to use, for instance, a plank or an upper body exercise. You're much more likely to rely on your arms and your chest than you are to use your core strength. So that's another aspect of that. And then just third is that men and women can exercise differently. Men and women tend to have different fitness goals. With men, it's a lot about building muscle. With women, muscle's important, but other stuff are important too. So anyways, just a few differences. We don't need to get into that too much, but the point is that men and women will practice yoga differently. They have different bodies, so they're going to do the poses differently. And men tend to make different errors. So first pose we're going to do is just a basic lunge. And one of the biggest errors that I see with men is that they will line up their feet. So you'll have a lot of yoga instructors actually say, bring your feet together in a straight line. So my back foot points to, my front foot is pointing to my back foot. And with men, that's actually kind of difficult to do. So what I'd recommend is making sure that you bring that back foot outside. So instead of having the front foot point straight to the back foot, you're going to bring that back foot to the outside a little bit so that you're about hip width distant, which is about 6 inches, depending on your hips. So that's mistake number one. Second mistake is that men are less flexible in their hips. So they'll try to mimic women, which means that they'll go way deeper than they really can. And what happens is when they do that, you'll notice that the lower back starts to arch. So they'll look something like this when they're doing that. Right, so the lower back is arching, my butt's kind of out behind me, I'm leaning forward with my chest like this. Right, so one thing that you guys will want to keep in mind is instead of bringing your feet really far back, have a shorter stance. So bring your back foot a little bit closer up. Make sure that your spine is neutral. So we're not letting our back arch, we're not letting our waist aim down at the floor. Instead, you want to have your waist aiming straight forward, or kind of think turning your belt buckle to face straight forward is one way to think of this. The other thing is to make sure that you're not locking out your back knee and arching your back. So it helps to actually soften the back knee a little bit. That way we can have a neutral lower back. You don't feel pinching in your spine. You can get the right engagement. It's not too deep of a stretch. So those are the 3 little tips you can do for a high lunge or any sort of lunge variation. Next pose we're going to talk about is a warrior one. And same thing as before. In a lot of yoga classes, the cue or the directive will be to have your front foot line up directly with the back foot. So in the case of warrior one, we'd be doing something like this. Right, so my right heel, my front heel is pointing directly to my left heel. And again, for men, just with the hip flexibility situation, that's not what I would do. I would have you actually bring that back foot out a little bit more. So I'm going to have you bring your left foot, just like that high lunge, you're going to have your back foot come out so that your right foot doesn't point directly to the back foot. So you want to have about 6 inches, or again, about hip width distant between the front and back foot. So if you have By the way, this mat I'm using is called, it's a Cork yoga mat it's actually my creation. It's the Manful Yoga edition of this mat. But the point is that I have alignment lines on here that tell me what I'm supposed to do with my legs. So for instance, in the Warrior One, my back foot is out at 45 degrees, okay? It's not out facing 90 degrees, it's not facing straight forward, it's out at 45 degrees. And that allows me to get a deeper stretch through my hip and through my groin. So anyways, other tip, 45 degrees with the back foot, hips are squared forward, just like high lunge. You want to have a shorter stance, so women, it's a lot easier for them to get their legs further back and still maintain proper form. But if I do this, if I get as wide as, well, a female yoga instructor would do, then my hips aren't going to be in the position. What I need to do is have my hips under my shoulders. I'm having my hips doing their best to aim forward. It's not going to happen, but I'm doing my best to get my hips to aim straight forward. And I want to be able to keep this back leg straight and my knee over my ankle, my front foot. So other thing you guys want to do is shorten your stance. So make sure that you're doing the position or the posture in a way that you get all the right muscle engagement, you're getting the right stretch without having any sort of improper technique in the back. So if you notice that your lower back is arching significantly and you have kind of a pinching sensation in your lower back, that's a good sign that you're going too far into this. So modification for men for Warrior One, feet are going to be closer together. You want to have your feet spread, so not lined up in a straight line, but back foot about 6 inches to the outside of the front foot. And then again, feet close together. So Warrior Two, this is another lunge position, and just like the high lunge in the Warrior One, biggest error that I see is having your feet be too far apart. So one cue that yoga instructors will give a lot is to have your ankles underneath your wrists, which is great if you have that hip mobility, but actually that's not great at all if you don't have the hip mobility. Because if I try to do that and I don't have the hip mobility, this is what my Warrior Two is going to look like. My butt's going to be sticking out way behind me, my back isn't flat, my pubic bone is aiming down instead of straight forward. So what I need to do is I want to choose a stance with my feet that allows me to square my hips toward the outside, that allows me to have a neutral lower back, that allows me to have a straight line from my pubic bone through my chest, right? So you can notice that my abs are facing straight to the outside, my belly button's facing straight forward, it's not aiming down, right? My butt isn't poking out behind me, it's still between my feet, and I'm able to squeeze my legs toward one another. That's a big factor here. If you can squeeze your legs toward one another in the position, then that's a good sign that you selected a good depth. If you can't squeeze your legs toward one another, then you're probably going too wide. And then, again, you do want to keep your butt kind of between your feet. So if your butt's poking out behind you like this, then you're probably going too far. So that would be a sign to bring your feet in a little bit. And just like Warrior One in the high lunge, you might want to have your foot slightly forward. So instead of having that back foot directly behind the front foot, maybe bring it out to the toward the side edge of the mat a little bit more, so you have a little bit more distance instead of lining up straight like this. We've got a little bit more of a gap between the feet. So that's Warrior Two tip number 2. The other thing is, last part of this is make sure that your back hip is pushing into your front hip and you're leading with the hips. Okay, so lead with your hips, not with your shoulders. I see a lot of people kind of reaching with their shoulders like this, and their hips stay back here, but their shoulders are way over here. You want to lead with your hips. So your hips go first, your shoulders stay on top of the hips, and that's going to help you keep your hips and your shoulders in the right position. Your spinal alignment is going to be correct, and you're ultimately going to get a better stretch and a better workout from that pose. Other pose I see big issues in is Goddess. This is called horse, and in Manful Yoga I call this Haka. If you're a female, it's again, hips are more mobile. So it's a lot easier for women to point their legs straight out like this. Okay, and I can't do this at all. I don't have the hip mobility for this. But in Goddess, you'll be directed to turn your toes out all the way. And when you do this and you don't have the hip mobility for it, my going to cave in. And I'm actually in a very unstable position here. So notice how my knees are caving in and my knees are not tracking over my middle toes. So for men, And for people who are less flexible in the groin area, you're going to turn your toes out about 45 degrees instead, right? So we're going to start there, and now we can do something where we're doing a haka. Our knees are still tracking over the middle toes. My butt is under my shoulders. So if you turn your toes out and you notice that your butt kind of goes out behind you and your back significantly arches, then that's a good sign that you're going too far. You're turning your toes too far out. So men, you're going to start with your feet at 45 degrees facing out instead. Make sure that you feel strong through your glutes here. You're still feeling some opening through, still going to feel a lot of opening through your groin, but at least your knees aren't caving in toward the middle. That's a really bad thing to do with the knees. That's unstable for the knees and can cause pain and injury. So we want to make sure that we're turning the toes out enough so that we can pretty much do a squat here. Feel the weight in the glutes. Keep your chest upright. Keep your spine as close to neutral as possible. And then one other thing I'm going to show is down dog, because most men do get this wrong. So again, this comes down to women being more flexible, but men, you guys want to bend your knees in a down dog. Pretty much all men need to bend their knees in a down dog. Unless you are an expert, unless you're very flexible, you should be bending your knees in a down dog. So what this looks like is instead of just going, a lot of yoga instructors will teach you to straighten the legs, to lock up your legs, and then do a down dog. And that's actually a really bad, misinformed cue. If you are locking out your legs and you don't have the hamstring mobility to do a down dog, or the hamstring flexibility to do a down dog, what's going to happen is your lower back will your lower back will round significantly. So your back will look something like, right, if you lock out your legs and you can't do this, your back will look something like this or worse, right? And we want actually to have a back that's flat here. So when you bend your knees, that allows you to flatten your back. So now I'm bending my knees, and I can actually do a down dog with a much straighter spine. But that starts with me bending my knees. So men, if you're new to yoga and you're doing down dog for the first 6 months, you're going to bend your knees a lot. And then even as you progress and you become intermediate or advanced with yoga, you're still going to bend your knees. And the goal here is to make your back flat. So bend the knees as much as you need to make your back flat. And then you can straighten the legs from there as much as you need to feel the stretch, but while maintaining that flat back. So your down dog is going to look, if you're looking at me, I guess, or if you're watching yourself do down dog, that's going to change from down dog looking like this, where you're feeling a stretch in your back but not in your hamstrings, to bending the knees, making your abs tight, and then starting to flattening out your back, abs tight, shoulders engaged, basically trying to mimic the feeling of a plank in your core and your upper body, and then straightening your legs until you feel that stretch in the backs of your thighs and your calves, but maintaining that flat back. So there you go. So basically all these tips come down to reflecting the reality that you are not as flexible as women. You're not as flexible as most people who have been doing yoga for a long time, especially if you haven't done yoga before, or if you're the typical inflexible dude who's doing yoga because your doctor or you heard that it was good for you some way or another. Maybe you're in your 40s, your 50s, your 60s, but the point is you're not going to be doing yoga like a girl who's in her 20s. So you want to make sure that you're adapting or doing yoga differently. So that's it. If you guys want to learn more about how to get better at yoga and also to learn more about poses, I have a free 7-day intro that I've created to help you learn about the poses involved in yoga, some of the major poses, how you can start doing those on a regular basis. And this is a really cool free program that I developed for beginner, intermediate, and even advanced levels. So it's free at my website, manfulyoga.com/intro. 7 days worth of lessons. We cover hips, we cover core, we cover shoulders, we cover posture, and then a few other things as well. So make sure to check that out if you haven't already seen that on my website. And then if you're watching this on social media now and you haven't already subscribed or liked this page or follow me on Instagram, make sure you do all three. If you have all three, we put out different content on all of these channels. And we're very regular with the content, so we put it out as often as we can. And it's all really focused on how can you integrate yoga with what you're doing? How can you do yoga in a way to get stronger without the traditional spiritual stuff or the traditional yoga approach. So workouts are much shorter, they don't take as long, they're more direct, they're to the point. And you can also find workouts based on what you're looking for instead of just doing whatever the yoga instructor feels like doing that day. So it's on-demand yoga, 24/7 access. You can use it on your phone, your computer, your tablet, anything with a screen pretty much. And that's it. I'll let you guys get back to whatever you're doing, but leave a comment, leave like it if you enjoyed this video, share it if you found it really cool. Any questions? Cool. All right, guys. Oh, and a final note on this mat. So this is the Manflow Yoga edition of our Cork yoga mat. We've been making this for quite some time now. Some things that make this special: it's 2 inches wider than a traditional yoga mat, which is really great for guys because if you've ever done down dog on a normal mat, your hands are too big for the mat, so your hands are going to go off the mat. It's a much longer mat. So we had our web developer is 6'3", and he can't lay down on a normal yoga mat because they're only 72 inches long. And he just posted this great photo in our community group of him lying on the mat, and he's really tall and he's totally on the mat. So it's much longer, it's 8 inches longer than a traditional yoga mat, and it's also much thicker. So a lot of yoga mats are thin, or they have like a spongy kind of material to them that makes it really hard to balance on. This is a very firm, yet slightly cushioned mat. So it's really great so if you have sensitive knees, and you have trouble putting your knee on the ground, this is a really good mat for that, because you're not going to hurt your knee when you put your knee down on the mat. It's also nice because it's firm enough for balancing, so when you actually do a balance pose, you're not going to have to worry about falling because it's like a spongy material. And what's best about this is the cork makes it no slip. So if you're used to sliding around on your mat during a down dog or during a plank, or doing, let's say you're in a wide-legged position and you're sweaty, and you notice that your feet start to slide apart, you don't have to worry about that with a cork yoga mat, just because the nature of cork is non-slip. So that also makes it really awesome. Again, this particular mat is the Manflow Yoga edition, and we have these lines on them. But we also have the Body by Yoga version, which is my DVD brand. And so we have the Body version available right now on Amazon. If you go to manflowyoga.com/mat, you can check it out. Otherwise, the Manflow Yoga edition actually sold out within 3 hours of it launching. So we're getting in a new shipment in a couple of days, or hopefully in a few days, and I'll let you guys know when that happens. So, all right, that's it. Thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video. We'll be here again 12 p.m. Central Time next week on Wednesday.